So we're going to kick this off with just a short introduction, and then they're going to get into their presentation. But these meetings are the most fun when people interact with the panelists and ask questions. So if you have stuff that you want to talk about right there, don't be afraid to interrupt the presentation and ask a question. We do not have to wait to the very end, but we will have a Q&A session at the end. And then we'll have some networking, and you can talk personally to the panelists. So without further ado, you want to kick off?
Hi, Dustin Sinton, Principal of Incite Automation. They gave me 2 badges. How about that? Yeah. I'm both a panelist and the Principal of Incite Automation. Yes. I actually started my career in AI 20 years ago, doing work for Sinclair Broadcast Group, helping them optimize ad sales using fuzzy logic and things like that. I'm so excited 20 years later to see what started as just a little glimmer of AI is now generative AI. I'm going to talk about that over the past year at Incite Automation. We've been able to implement it for organizations large and small. We're going to talk about some stories today, show you some real world examples and things that you can hopefully use walking right out the door that might impact your organization. So really excited to be here. Thank you all so much for coming.
Good morning. I'm Ron Connolly. I'm the VP of Technical Operations at DP Solutions. Happy to in the room know who we are. We are your support company. I've been in IT 30 plus years. Came up through the ranks from everything from desktop support to field support to now what I do now. At DPS, I oversee the cybersecurity team, project management, all the very senior engineers. So if you talk to any of our senior engineers, that's my team. Along with Melissa, we are the operations leadership of the company. And Dustin and Jermaine from Sherweb, they are 2 of our primary partners when it comes to licensing for various things, Microsoft and everything, and also with Dustin with a lot of his automation. So thank you all for being here.
That's pretty. All right. So last but not least, I suppose, and you get to say that by yourself. Yeah, perfect. You know what? I get to say whatever I guess. Jermaine Clark. I am a biologist turned techie that has been in the industry for about 8 years. Run MSP very well for a period of time. And the reason my claim to fame of being a Copilot or AI expert is that I was there at the advent of Copilot when it was published. I was there, I had early access. I've been using it for a little over a year now. Unfortunately, I couldn't do anything on the pricing. Talk about that another time. But that being said, I've been with Microsoft as a partner for a long time. I've got a lot of great insight from there, and I love the industry. It's been great. I just did 2 full days torturing Ron at a boot camp that he attended earlier this week. And he's still here. So if you see him put in the earplugs when I'm speaking, it's because he's had 2 full days of interacting with the company. So I'm excited to have a little bit of time with you today before we head out. And just so you're aware, it's my first time in this part of the United States. I'm from Toronto, and it's been great. So I don't know. I mean, I might have to move here at some point. All right, so that's me up there. With Sherweb, I've been here for about 7 weeks. And joined the company, very excited because about a year and a half ago or so, I sat in a taxi cab with an unwitting person who decided that they were going to share the cab with me from the airport to our hotel for the event. Man, did he make a mistake. I spent 35 minutes out of a 40-minute drive talking about AI. That was a year and change ago. So when I decided I was going to change jobs, they decided that I was going to be the guy. That's on. Yeah, they decided I was going to be the guy to do the Copilot thing. And when we talk about Copilot today, and when we talk about AI, one of the primary things I hear people going around the room saying, and you can tell me if it's true or not, is that, well, it's going to take some jobs and it's going to make people uncomfortable and everything's going to go, and then Skynet's going to turn up and take over the world. All right, now you've aged yourself. Now I know who the geeks are in the room. But the idea of having an AI assistant is not something that's new. right? Everybody uses Waze, you've used Google Maps, like the advent of AI and how things go all around. If we've been using it all the time to augment humans across our existence, really. If you think about a tool like a knife's a great way to AI cut your vegetables. Right? You stand up there chipping it up with your teeth. I mean, come on, that's very unhygienic. But what we want to talk about to kind of get you over that hump a little bit is tell you what you need to do with an organization or a company to get ready so that you can actually utilize this AI stuff and make it beneficial. And it's important here, beneficial to you, not create a bunch of problems for you, but you are going to have to learn how to work a different way. And you're going to have to be able to put in place the controls and the policies, just like you would have done before in the past or every other thing you did. You're going to have to put those controls in place and kind of get yourself ready. So let's see if this little pointy thing works. It does work, but you can't do it on a TV. It just disappears. Lasers, right? So when you think about how you prepare your organization, you've got to have a strong foundation around your policy of how you're going to first use it ethically, who you're going to give it to in your organization. You've got to have the right licensing to make sure that the optimization of what you're doing gets done, right? So how many people here drive a car that's not fuel injection today? Anybody here know what a carburetor is? All right, okay, that's a better question. Okay, so if we think about fuel injection versus carburetor, you can't cross-contaminate those two because they won't work with each other, right? And when you think about that, the cars and the emissions efficiencies and things that came from one didn't come from the other, but it had to grow in that terms of idea. And then you had to learn how to maintain a different type of engine, different kind of fuel gauge system. So the advent of that technology changing over time, when you think about how you're going to prepare your environment, secure it properly, you're going to have to train the people to do it. You're going to have a governance policy in place to make sure that that does not create more problems for you in the future. Because if you go create a paper or publish something, somebody gets mad about the fact that it was AI, and then I'm going to sue somebody, or the government is coming down on me, or we're going to ban AI in your district. We don't want that to happen. We want a lot of you to be able to use that in the future and get that going so that it supports you, right? I don't have to carry around a map in my car because I have Google Maps or I have Waze and I can drive. I just drove down, never been to Philadelphia, never been to Baltimore, and I drove all the way here. I mean, you guys really do love your construction, but I didn't drive all the way here. So when we think about getting prepared is one thing, get yourself energized about, well, yes, I have to create some policy. Yes, I have to go figure out how my end users and my team is going to work with AI, because you can't work it the same way, right? Before you had a Keurig or whatever automated coffee machine you had a French press, you boil the thing in one of those little fancy ones you put on top of the stove. There's all these different ways that you can make the same thing. This is just an addition to that. And the whole purpose of it is to make sure that you get to be more efficient. So I'll tell you, Ron and I were laughing in my presentation a few days ago. Ron was like, oh, I need to create slides. And he just showed me how to create 2 slides. So you spent the rest of the presentation not paying attention to anything except the 2 slides. But now I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to create any kind of a presentation. It was 3. Oh, he did 3. So I believe he can, in the future though, he's not going to even worry about creating the slides during his presentation because he'll know how to do it later on. He'll know how to frame it up so that he gets the best out of what's there. So let's talk a little bit real quick around, here's the family of Copilot. When we think about Copilot or we think about generative AI, a lot of people in the room, how many of you have either used or heard of ChatGPT? By a show of hands. Everybody, yeah, okay. Was that the use or no of? I asked 2 questions here. All right, everybody's busted. You both use it and you have it. But the idea there is from a Copilot family perspective, how many people in here are Microsoft users? Microsoft perpetually. How many Google people? All right, we'll talk afterwards. Those are the 3 people I'm going to chat to. I'm doing socializing. Very important. I just want to understand the other side of the fence and then convert you to the dark side. But when we think through it, the whole purpose of the family of Copilot and you're gonna hear a lot about Copilot, but Copilot is just the, Kleenex of this particular AI. Because what it's gonna be developed to do is address every job type that we have, make more specific to the industry that you work in. If you're a garage or your school or your grocery store, there should be a Copilot version that supports that type of industry and that type of job. Okay? So when we think through it, the Power Platform, D365, Microsoft Security, GitHub, that one's going to be really important for the people who develop and make sure that they can build the applications of the future within your organization without having to go and learn all of the code, because it will be low code, no code, right? You're like me and you knew how to use DOS back in the day. We don't need it today. You can still do it, but it's not required. You just work with the interface, and we've improved that graphical user interface so much over time. We're going to do the same thing with GitHub and make sure that programming gets developed beyond. So if you think about where we are today with that open AI, when you think about where we're at, we have a new baseline of where we're starting with everything that we do now. You don't have to go figure out how to create a bio. You throw the thing in there, give it the link to your LinkedIn or whatever you have, and Bob's your uncle, tell it you want, 5 lines in a paragraph, tell me something nice about Jermaine, and boom, you have it. Now you don't have to like it. You can switch it around. But the main thing is you're not coming up against it to start on the page where the cursor is blank. You can tell it what's there, get something done. So now we have a new baseline of where we're starting with everything that we do. All right, so a little bit there. Now let me just shotgun on and torture you to death. So when we think about how we're going to do it, and I alluded to this a little bit, we want to make sure that it has a role place in your environment. If it doesn't exist today, it may exist in 6 months. So you want to be able to go through, figure out in your own companies, in your own businesses, how am I going to use this going forward? What are some of the ideas around where I can apply AI? And talk to your friends, talk to the people that are using it. Encourage everybody to use it, because until you start using it, you won't understand the nuances of where you can apply it. And until you do that, you can't write a policy to ensure that you're putting proper governance in place. And you also won't be able to decide what relevant data in your environment needs to be available to the AI versus not. So it's really a little bit of the cart before the horse here, because until you can figure out what you want to do, how you want to do, and what you're going to do to ensure that it's done ethically and safe, you're going to have to start using it very soon. And if you're not doing it today, just consider, I'm the expert because I've been presenting on this for a year. Like, who does that? Right? You go to university for like 9 years before they're like, okay, well, you've now passed the base thing. You get to go do the MD. It's been 12 months. And people are following me around going, hey, we got to Copilot expert. Yeah, how am I expert? Well, I train in dog ears. When you train in dog ears, you know how that goes, right? It's 1 for 7. So there you go. I've been in 12 months, but I've done 7 years worth of work on it. But when you think about your environment and your marketing, we got to figure out what you're going to do. Whatever is not here on the list, this is by no means exhaustive, because we don't know what all the jobs are out there, where the applications are going to be, and that's where you all come in. So what I would ask for everyone in the room is, it's just to whet your palate, let you know what's available, what's out there. But the call to action coming out of this conversation today should be, I'm going to go get some form of generative AI. I'm going to go practice with it. I'm going to go learn what it can do for me, what it can do for my teams. And then I want to be able, at the end of the day, to use the resources I have, but have 1.5 times the production or the capacity. You don't need to increase headcount. If the people that are working with you are happy, one, make sure it's the people that are happy. It's not, hey, go use AI right now and do double your work. It's, let's see how AI can help you do what you have today so that you have capacity to add to the growth of the company. And that's the end of it with the bottom line, because everybody here is going to have to make some form of money to carry and govern their company. And in order for you to do that with the same people that you have, in order to elevate those people and bring them up to a higher level of skill and not replace them, the idea here is to make them more productive by supplying them with the right technology. And with that, I'll leave it there and turn it over to Dustin.
Good morning, everybody.
You want to be able.
No, I don't want to be over there.
Good.
I want to be over at this table. Give me that. Thank you.
There you go.
Well, while I get set up, I'm going to tell you guys a story. The reason we have so much construction is that boats from other countries keep running into all of our stuff. So, I'm just talking to one of our clients that is one of the largest cooking companies. There's EP One as well, Terminal Corporation. And they said, Dustin, we want you to build a form of some kind with AI that whenever the boats are coming in, right when they get back in Wi-Fi range or cellular range, they'll say, hey, I got a shipping container that we got to get to New Jersey by Thursday, and it's got to be refrigerated. What'll it cost? Stuff this from the boat over to New Jersey, right? And we have to answer thousands of those emails a day. And I said, just build like an online form to fill out, like, you know, and you can type in all the details, and then we can build something that will give them a quote in real time using that form. Don't try to make this work with AI over email. And they're all like, nah, it's not going to work. And I said, why not? And I said, because Dustin, what they do is they write an email with what they want, and they BCC 12 different companies, including us, right? And whoever gets back with a bid in an hour with the cheapest price, that's who they go with. They don't want to fill out that form 12 times. They want to write one email with the details, and whoever gives the quote back first wins. And I said, God. So what did we do? We took Copilot with AI. We were able to teach it how to glean out. This is the shipping container name. This is where it wants to go. It needs refrigerated or not, right? And so everybody else was getting quotes, and they started to get calls. How did you get us a quote in 23 seconds? Like, everybody else usually gets back to us in a couple of hours, but like do that. And that's how they were able to do that. That had a significant impact on their business, just teaching it how to read. Oh, good. My laptop's showing on the screen now. Hooray. I'm hoping as I talk today and show you guys some real world examples of how we're implementing this, that you guys might raise your hand and ask me some questions. You know, AI's been around, like I said, for about 20 years. Generative AI is the new thing. Something that wasn't purpose-built for one thing, like OCR, reading a document. That's what's new. You know, when we think about Copilot, we often think about the Office suite. That's the association that we've been given, a $30 a month version. And people ask me, like, what are you using that for? Nothing. It's not that great. No, sorry to say it. That really expensive version of Copilot, it's going to be great in 2026. It's not that great now. I'm really sorry to say it. And the reason for that is that the Office suite, I've actually programmed it for T. Rowe Price in the past, adding components to it, is built off of C++ and C code from the 90s. Microsoft doesn't even know how it works anymore. And so when you're in it, it's basically just doing keyboard emulation. It's pretending to type at the keyboard things in Word and stuff like that. And if you go into Copilot version of Word, which again is $30 a month, and you have it write this beautiful document, it will do a really good job. And then you can type something in like, could you make the font a little bit bigger? And it'll go, no, I can't do that. It can't control Word. It can't control Excel yet. They're adding the hooks in to do that. So for today, it's a little bit more than a glorified keyboard. I would say its best purpose, I'm in PowerPoint right now, is to come into here and I can make presentations and slides. PowerPoint was the newest member of the family. So if I type in here, make a slide detailing what makes DP Solutions so great, in a couple seconds, it'll pop out a slide with 3 things gleaned from their website, right? You know, or something like that. Is that useful? I've had it, you know, shake loose some things that are interesting, but generally this has not transformed. Oh, look, there we go. Yeah, that's all true. Woo! Yeah. Ron likes that. Ron's like, damn, that's better than my slides. But there you go. And then I can change the look and feel and stuff like that. So it does a decent job, but in the next few years, it's going to be great. So I'm worried that people are going to be judging AI based on what it is today and just that Copilot in the Office suite. Don't judge it by that, okay? There's a lot more Copilot than just what's in there. And the best part is a lot of it you already own. Okay, so walking out of here today, you can try a lot of what I'm showing on the screen yourself. And these examples will get better as I go, so stay with me. I should crust right from the sugar high, from the syrup is kicking in. That's where the best stuff is coming. First thing I want to talk about, a way that real companies are using this now is in Zoom, in Teams Premium, which you guys did talk about. when you're recording a meeting, it's not just about transcription anymore. Here's a meeting that I had last week, right? And it's showing on the side here my notes. At Incite Automation, we no longer take notes anymore ourselves. We trust these systems to do it better than we do, and that makes us more present in our meetings, right? And if you look on the right-hand side, again, this is not a transcription. This is what actually occurred and when it occurred in the meeting and who was talking where. And look at these wonderful follow-up tasks at the bottom here of what we have to do next, right? I also like B.AI. I started using it. I was talking to people in Redmond at Microsoft, and I saw lots of them using it. And I was like, wait a minute. Read.AI isn't a Microsoft product. Why are you guys using it? And then I saw it does like an ESPN highlight reel and the best 3 minutes of the meeting, what was said. It gives you all these analytics of when the people in the meeting were engaged or not. But the other reason people are using this, not just to take notes, is to be in multiple meetings at once, right? I see organizations where now they classify their meetings as, this is the meeting where you're a direct contributor. So I need you actually in the meeting, even though it's virtual, versus 3 other meetings I might be having at the same time, where I might just be given some tasks. I don't actually attend those meetings anymore. I wait for this to tell me what items I'm supposed to do. I click into here and go, sticky button feature. And then when I click that, it jumps me to the spot where they talk about what I'm supposed to do. So I'm able to attend about 3 times more meetings than I actually sit in these days because I'm using this to do it. Terrifying change of culture. Maybe it's for you, maybe it's not. But that's the way that I'm seeing people use this. All right. In the Office suite, real quick, think of it as a 5th member of the team. I'm in PowerPoint. I say, I want to suggest some ideas to do optimize our website without using social media. And it will come up with suggestions, some of which are great, legitimately, to help you. And, when I'm writing, it'll help as well. I wanted to generate some images. I said, send me something in black and white, a sticky note board. None of these existed before this shop was created. It didn't search the internet. It created for me exactly what I was using. And that I really do use in the Adobe suite and the Microsoft suites to make my content creation much, much faster. This is something you have available to you now, right? When I'm writing a document, say in PowerPoint, I wrote that text, right? But then I'll say, give me a couple other ways to write it. Give me a concise version. Give me a version that's just bulleted text, right? That sort of thing. So I'm not having it always write for me. I'm having it be my editor and give me some riffs on what I'm doing. Okay, these are ways you can use the out of the suite version of of Office now. And then lastly, and then I'll get to the good stuff. Here's something in Word, right? I didn't feel like working hard. I took that paragraph, just make it a table. I want that to look like dates. No, not like that. Put the start and end dates together. I don't want them like that. And then it created an exact replica of what I needed there. It's saving me time. Over the next few years, I'm right in your way. I'm really sorry. I'll walk around more. I'll roam. So that's what we can do today in the Office suite. It's not just about trying to create these things for you. There's this product Microsoft makes called SharePoint. Maybe you've heard of it. You don't know this, but you already own what I'm about to show you. This is called SharePoint Syntax. You take 5 copies of a contract or document, right, and feed it into here. And it's going to say, wait a minute, this is different in that document. What is that? That's the agreement number. Okay, what's this? This is the effective date. What's this? That's the contractor name. It will pull out the things that are different between those 5 contracts. You train it on what those things are that are different. And then any future contracts you upload, it can tease out all that information. It can also do the opposite. I want to generate a contract. Great. What's the effective date? What's the contractor name? What's all that information? It will write one of these contracts for you. You already have that. All you have to do, yeah.
Using the contract in that folder as well.
What do you mean?
So if you have 16 contract, you write contract in a particular way, you ask them to make a contract, then this Copilot look at that and.
It's looking at those 5 examples. Like it was 5 of the same contract, but for 5 different companies, and there's a couple differences between them. And from that, if you say make a 6th, it will look at all the places to plug in information and then do that. And you get a Word document, then you can edit it from there. I can do this with templates today, but now you don't need me anymore to make those templates and generate those sort of things in Python systems. You can just use this to do that. We have a scanner in our office, and when I get back to my desk, I'm going to drop into it some receipts. I'm going to drop into it some business cards from people I met here, and that system is going to say, oh, business card. Throw all that information in the CRM, receipt, throw that in the accounting system. Whatever I throw into that scanner is going to go. The backbone of that is SharePoint syntax, okay, at the end of the day, which all of you have. Side note that people don't know, when people say to me, we want e-signature, which should we buy? I said, you know that SharePoint has e-signature built into it, right? And they go, no, I didn't know that. Also part of syntax. So if you don't feel like spending $120 a month on Adobe Sign or DocuSign, we can show you how to use this. It costs $1 per envelope. It's a lot cheaper than the other options. You already own it. So there is SharePoint syntax. Next thing I'm going to show you, this is a bigger example. We build Dynamics 365 and Salesforce for a lot of organizations. Anybody in the room that can't find a system that does exactly what they need, Meryl works with me in Celebration. Hi, you talked to her too. We build systems that run organizations end to end using these platforms. That's our bread and butter, right? And one of our clients is a customer service place. One of the 5 largest companies in the United States. They're in healthcare, and their name rhymes with CVS because it's CVS. And in their system, this isn't the real system, of course, they have data, right? And they have emails that they're talking to people on. And when I click this summary tab, you can see that beautiful Copilot logo. It will look at all the emails from this person, all the data we have about them, and give me a quick summary. Look, this guy's applying for a job, and we told him no, but he's still replying anyway. And so instead of sorting through all the information at their fingertips, that's what I did. Up from 2018 at Incite Automation up until today, we said we can put all the information at your fingertips, right? And we've been great at doing that, getting all the emails and all the meetings and all the stuff in one system. But with this, we can bring it all together in a paragraph and get somebody up to speed very quickly on where we are. Yes,
So CVS probably has HIPAA compliance,
I do.
and how are you able to use Copilot with that? And are they using GCC High, which is not available yet? And
They're not using GCC High. There are ways to bucket Copilot so that the data you're feeding it don't go out to everybody, but just to your tenant, just to your org, right? And that's what we're using here. I'm actually going to show another, I'm going to show it now since you brought it up. We had to learn how to navigate what you're talking about. So this is Copilot Studio. This is how developers add your organization's data to Copilot, but only so that it can be used for you. It's not now something that everybody gets to use, right? When you bring information inside of Copilot, it doesn't make it smarter for everybody. There's Skynet scenarios you were talking about earlier. It's something that, it's just for your work. And I wanted to learn how to use it. So we fed every single thing Incite Automation has into it. Okay, we put every bit of data from our SharePoint libraries, every database we had, we put it all into this to see what it would do. And once we fed it all in there, we were just looking at this text box. I said, what do we type? And so I wrote, how does Incite Automation run invoices? How do we do it? And it looked through all of our systems and it generated one of our SOPs, one of our standard operating procedures, which hopefully it does in about 3 seconds. 2, 1. Damn, I was really hoping that. I love live demos for that reason. It's going to do it. Just give it a sec. No, really, send, fail, retry. Okay. And it wrote our standard operating procedures for us, which it's going to do it. Just give it a second. I don't know what's up.
But this is the exact reason why Skynet can't take over the world.
Yeah.
Those Wi-Fi connections. Try.
I blame this bar here. I'm going to refresh the whole screen. That usually takes it, but anyway. But anyway, it will write that. We had it write our handbook in an hour, basically afterwards, citing sources and things like that. Another example of this, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, big nonprofit. They write a document every year, okay, with all the good they do in the world. Hundreds of hands touch this document, okay, and that document has lots of footnotes in it. of what, citing, we said we did this much good in the world. And there's hundreds of people working on this. And then they spend at the end, once they finally think they have it, days figuring out if all the footnotes still jive with what we wrote because they're moving stuff around. So they say, could we use AI to look at all the footnotes, go back out to those articles and make sure they're all still line up? That's exactly what we built for them. Save them days and days and days of work. Man, it really is down right now. Oh, well, funny more demos where that came from.
It was the same thing with Clippy until they got it.
Yeah. Another, and then I'm going to end with my favorite. Another real world example. It's a connection I made thanks to Ed, the National Aquarium, right? We were bringing in data for them. And, they have lots of pre-canned reports, but this feature in Power BI I'm about to show you is AI adjacent. It's called natural language query, right? You bring all of your data into Power BI, you train it on your lingo, your words. And as a result, I can say, show a map of donors to the National Aquarium. And there they are. Show me average donation amount by month. Perfect. I'll do one more.
The dynamic.
Donation. What's that?
Is a dynamic weighted graphs from the data you have in it?
Yeah, I'm just typing whatever I want in the moment and it creates those for me. And then I can pin those to a dashboard. We are out of the report writing business at Incite Automation. We configure these tools for organizations so they're able to do this themselves and empowered to do it. Many of you probably already have Power BI, you know what I mean? And people ask us, will you write reports for us? And we go, why? If we configure this right, you should be able to describe what you're looking for and have it write the reports for you. And then the last thing I'll talk about, and then I'll hop up the stage, is the most powerful thing you can do today. Everyone in this room that has Office 365 owns Power Automate. You all have it. It's in the waffle in the top left corner. This is the thing that you can do today that will save you time when you get back to your office, okay? And, up until recently, you had to be sort of a developer to use this tool, but I want all of you to think about the busy work you do in your day, okay? When a client emails me about a status update, then I send an email to Janice, and then about a half hour later, Janice gets back to me, and then I email the client that thing, right? We all do some version of that. And you think about those loops, right? And how many times a day we do them. All those things that aren't critical to why you're doing what you do, Power Automate solves that, okay? And you needed to hire us before to be able to actually make use of it. They added Copilot into this. So if I type, whenever I get an email, send me a Teams message that says, yay, breakfast. Actually, I should say send it to Merrill, but I'm not going to. I click generate, and it will generate that Power Automate flow for me, okay? And then there it is. And I hit next, create that flow, and now those systems are tied together. Whenever I get a new email, post a message that says, yay, breakfast, right? And you can add in hundreds and hundreds of things into this. E-signature tools, text messaging, you name it, whatever you want. At Incite Automation, we have one. If you don't submit your timesheet, we like timesheets at Incite Automation, or at least I do. When you don't submit your timesheet, Power Automate looks through all the staff who hasn't submitted their timesheet, and it sends them an email at 7 p.m. Power Automate, hey, submit your timesheet. And then if you still haven't submitted your timesheet Saturday morning at 9 a.m., it sends you a text message, hey, submit your timesheet. And if you haven't submitted your timesheet from 10 a.m. Saturday morning, it sends you a text message every 60 seconds from rolling phone numbers. We don't have a problem with people not submitting their timesheet. But this is the tool that does that, right? And it can glue all your systems together. All of you own it. You all have it today. So you heard what's coming in Copilot. For those of you on a Salesforce or Dynamics-based system, that summarization can be really powerful in your reporting, business intelligence. We talked about that. And I did it all 15 minutes as promised. Thank you.
We're getting reconnected here. I'm like out in the dog years. I am 350 some odd years old. So thank you for that.
Sorry, yeah.
So yes, Ken and I spent 2 days with Jermaine up in Philly going over this stuff. So imagine coming off day one was pretty much all security oriented and everything. And then day two was the sales side. I'm not a salesperson. So yes, there was a little bit of not really paying attention, but that's what Ken was there. So, two things I just want to point out, real quick is that, and Jermaine was right. I actually did use, Copilot to do my slide deck initially because, Jill and Megan, they're the ones that usually save me on slides because I don't like PowerPoint because I never have been. But I did use, Copilot, and literally what I did was, at the time, create a PowerPoint presentation with 3 slides for security and MSP support for Copilot. And it created 3 slides. Some of them are in here. We tweaked them because we just didn't like them. But we did use that. The second thing we did is we had bios that we created. I don't like creating bios, like it's not me, it's not my thing. So we have a bio on our website for all of our employees. What I did is, did the same thing, is create a presenter's introductory bio from this website from Ron, and I pasted our website in there. And
Turn it on.
it is.
Smack that space bar.
350 years. huh?
Watch it, click it.
Only
Yeah.
200 in IT.
There you go.
There it goes.
So, here's the next one real quick. That's what Copilot created right there. I didn't type any of that, and we did 6-7 months ago. Yeah, that's not me. If y'all know me, that's not me, how I do my stuff and everything. But that's what Copilot did right there, and y'all have to read that. You go back.
Oh, back to
So what is, and this is, Dustin gave good examples and everything, some real world examples. Jermaine went over to kind of the licensing things. There are certain things that need to be in place before you even put Copilot in use, whether it's for one user who has an admin level credits, or it's one person that's in marketing and has just basic user credits. Before we do that, but I just want to show you, thanks Jermaine for letting me borrow the slide, the picture there. This is basically how Copilot works. This is a pointer. At the top, user puts in, you saw Dustin do this, types in whatever, insert from whatever application he uses. He was using Word and PowerPoint or in SharePoint. It searches all through the systems that it's allowed to. It pulls from all the different systems that it has permission to do, that user does. So if the user doesn't have access to shared mailboxes, it's not going to pull from those mailboxes. It's going to pull from specific mailboxes. Same thing with folders in OneDrive and all that stuff. If it does not have access to the marketing folder, it's not going to pull access from marketing. It'll pull from everything else that user has access to, but not marketing because they don't have access. All of that work, it takes a lot of time to get ready. There's a lot of companies right now, if you go into your tenants and everything, I have access to everything. Melissa might have access to customer service only. If stuff bleeds over, you can be in a world of hurt with sharing data, confidential data, proprietary data, HIPAA, CMMC, pretty much anything. So with that, you have to make sure your tenants are ready before you even start. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. So very first thing, the bullet up there, and I don't know if you guys can see with this glare and everything, is majority of the clients we have, and majority of the folks that want to use Copilot, they are not ready for it right now. You're just not. You have to be ready from a security perspective. And I know this rains on Dustin shower a little, or pray a little bit, but that's just the way it is that you have to be security ready before you roll it out. Quick
Not
example.
wrong.
Not wrong. So a quick example of this is back in January. Jermaine's been using it for a year and a half or so. I've been using Copilot for about 6 months. About back in January, Microsoft released a licensing. Made it available from 300 licenses down to individuals. It's $360 a pop up front for a year. Not a lot of people wanted to do that, but those that did, we ran into issues. Slow your horses. Let's figure it out. We need to figure out this security issue. Internally, we created a brand new user account, no credits, no nothing, no access to anything. What is the financial status of the company? Whatever we put, and it was pulling data. So there was a lot of gaps that we had. So with that, we found out we had to go through the readiness assessments, which really wasn't even available at the time. Put in permissions log, put in routing logs, put in pretty much everything we had to do with security. We had to do all that before we started using it. So right now we have a couple people that do have licenses. They can't even use it right now because we have locked down because we wanted to test the security. We tried it with a few of our customers and similar things. The owner of the company who has keys to the kingdom can see everything. The executive assistant or whoever doesn't have access to anything, she could still see everything. So we had to fix those bugs. So with that is, you get ready for Copilot, that's kind of hard to see too, and some of these are repeats of domains because of that important, is a readiness assessment is required. Whether you do it yourself, you have an outside vendor do it, we do it, whichever. You need to go specific sections of your tenant to see if their permissions are in place. If they're not, you risk sharing that data across the board. They go the deep dive into permissions and user groups. You just want to make sure that the marketing folder is locked down to marketing people or whoever needs access. Financial folder, financial people have access, things like that. The two things that don't come up a lot is the implement the data governance policy. Is just basic policies, how you handle your data and everything. And the other one is for more compliance. We're seeing this a lot more with CMFC. NIST has, or HIPAA has it now. GDPR has it, a few others, is an AI use policy. How many companies have an AI use policy in place right now? Like 3, well ahead of the game right there. Majority of the folks they have an IT policy that basically says change password every 90 days, don't do bad stuff, we're watching you, things like that. That's the generic version. If you go through something like CMFC, you're going to have 50 policies, and they're not fun to create. ChatGPT or a Copilot helps with that, by the way. And then a lot of training. There's a lot of training videos out there. They're free, but they're on Microsoft's website. They're on Sherweb. Call us, they'll help you. Call us up, we'll help you. There is a lot of training out there how to use Copilot. If you don't know how to use it, it can just give you that bad taste. I believe you said the other day, it's not ready for Excel just yet. It has to be in table format. I played with it and it was kind of a waste. Now, Joe over there, he lives in Excel. He's a guru. It's not ready for what you would do with that. But Word, SharePoint, and all, or PowerPoint, all the other stuff, it's there now. We have a client that has a password policy, like 5-page password policy they want to implement. And they wanted a very detailed, specific order project list or a scope of work. We kept going back and forth. They weren't liking what we were like presented. Create a password policy scope of work using this attached document. Popped it in there. Boom. Made no changes. Send it over to them. They loved it. And the two big things is, this is not set in stone, but the foundational part is, who knows what their tenant, their Office 365 tenant secure score is?
Wah, wah.
You don't, because it changed last night. How about your identity score? Do you know what they are?
I did have the pleasure.
Yeah. So both of those are basically, it's just the foundation of if your tenant is ready for 360 or for Copilot and other solutions. It's the baseline foundation, permissions, settings. Do you have certain things enabled? Do you have EDR placed? Do you email tagging? 200 some odd items in there. You do certain ones, the key ones, and you get a score. The secure score, the average, which I thought was low, the average is 47%. According to Google, so that's right. The identity score, the average of that was like 32%. Again, blame Google if that's wrong. In order to be Copilot ready, you need a secure score of about 75 minimum, and the identity score of about 85. So that's where we need all that work we need to do beforehand. We need to get those scores up to a point where you're Copilot ready. If not, you risk spreading data or sharing data.
Yes, gotcha. AI.
All right, MFA must. Who does not have MFA on their systems or their emails? So having MFA on your email at a minimum is a must. You must have that. Ideally on your systems themselves. Secure your tenant with zero trust framework. Again, some of this is from what Jermaine was talking about, policies, conditional access policies. Those are just tighter permissions within the tenant, locking things down, who has access to this, what you can and can't do. Can you share it externally if you travel overseas? Even if you go to Bermuda, go to Canada, we have to put in special permissions to go to Canada in your filtering, otherwise you're not gonna get your email. We like the Canadians, they're okay. Even though they're a team, my team, and hockey player. The next one here is a lot of folks, we see this a lot internally is where, okay, I've made all these changes and you're good to go, and we leave it. That is definitely not the case with something like Copilot or security in general. Who's a lot of IT people, who are more of the security oriented folks? Okay, quite a few. So how often do you guys go back in and repeat? You check and check and check and check. It's a constant thing. On the server side, we set it and forget. That's just the way your life was back in the day. Now we automate all that stuff. With Copilot and the permissions and everything, you have to constantly check it. Can't automate some of that stuff. You have to go in there and review, check your security score frequently. Did it change? Somebody go in there and do something, change it, things like that. Adheres to industry compliance requirements and applicable laws. That kind of gets into the privacy laws. Big question we had, we spent a good hour on it the other day, was privacy. How does my data, how does Microsoft take my data? Can I share it across the tenant? Things like that. As an MSP, we have portals that we use with Sherweb. We have access to where we have a lot of our clients are in one bucket, one portal. So we have Children's Guild and we have Arctic Tongue and whatever, all in the same portal. How does the data not spread? It's because all the permissions and everything that we put in place prevents all that. And we test it. We make sure that's in place. So none of the data leaves our tenant room. When it comes to y'all's tenants, all your data is wherever you get access to. It's not shared outside the company. It's not shared outside to Google. It's not shared to Microsoft. It's in-house, 100% in-house. That's another entire day conversation there. And it also is with the CMMC regulations. If anybody's read the new guidelines that came out back in December, that's proposed, so we hopefully coming out later this year. There's nothing about AI in there. There's very minimal about AI in there. It doesn't talk about Copilot at all. So that's probably gonna be an amendment to, as soon as they approve it, there's gonna be an amendment to it about Copilot and using AI in general. Talks about AI policy, but it doesn't talk about the usage of it or storing the data. So if you have FCI or COI data, it doesn't specifically talk about that. And then again, I just put this on here, is all these controls must be in place before you use Copilot the first time. Now, as admin people, that's one thing, but if you start sharing and access and everything, make sure your permissions are in place before you roll it out. Otherwise, you're just gonna start spreading data. With that, I think I'm done.
Ding.
And I'm done.
This is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, I had a question 2 slides ago, but I didn't wanna disrupt. Is there something like, AI access profile? So there's value in a CEO looking at something and having access to everything, and then they can get the answer. But when he's creating a profile, a presentation, that is limited to what she can share. So is there a way that you can set up when I have access to everything, but when I'm generating something, I need it to be restricted as a scope that you can set up for creating things. Otherwise, what I create versus what CEO creates, then we're different because we have access, but there's no way to kind of layer that access to what is the intention of this access to it.
So that when you use this, can you, my scope of it is that you can put in a folder in there, but I don't know if it spreads across.
So, so if I understand the question correctly, so let's say we've got someone with higher permissions, someone with restricted permissions, and you're looking to create a document for consumption. Who's creating the document? The CEO or yourself?
So as the CEO is creating, they have access to everything,
Right?
but the document you're creating shouldn't get all the information. It's good for me to have, the information for making decisions, but when I'm creating something, I don't want all of that going into that document. So
Okay.
is there a way you can set up, when we create things at, say, at admin level or at this level, this is the scope that generative AI has access to, versus I have access to everything I need to consume the data myself.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. You can do two things. Well, two things right off the bat would be you generate what would be considered just-in-time access or just enough access for your Copilot session. That would allow it to pull the information that it requires at an elevated status at the time. And then you would have it generate the documentation that you want for output to be, you'd have to have data labeling in place, which will basically pull out any information or data that is considered labeled as sensitive or otherwise. And once that's in place and the data is tagged, when you go to create the end product document, it will only have the information you want to be presented across the board. So you're really creating it based on when you use your Copilot, this is for, you have to tell it, this is for general consumption, which will give it the data tag that is for everyone in the company, which means it'll give it permissions levels for those, which means that anything that gets put into that document based on the labeling will be what everyone has access to, right? So when you're processing it, you'll be able to see all that you want to see, but the output that you get will be for the consumption level that you're provided the guidance on, right?
Someone like a meta tag for every data point that you're putting in, saying this is publicly sensitive, and then because it's harder to go the other way around, since you keep adding data to it, at the point of
Correct.
data entry, you say this is sensitive, this is
Correct.
public.
Yeah.
Then you can train the AI model to just be quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And data labeling is extremely important when you're doing that, but the elevation access as well.
I hit this from a little bit of a different perspective because I'm not a security expert, but certainly security plays a role in building the applications inside the nation that we build. I would put it akin to when Power BI first came out. It had poor filtering and controls. When you hooked all the data, everybody can see all the data. And then they added in later the layers to give you that fine level of control. And we have the tools today to achieve what you're looking for, but they are rudimentary. For some of the organizations we work with, I showed off the one thing that didn't work, the Copilot Studio that will make multiple Copilot Studio advisors, depending on the role of the person in the organization, and hook them up slightly differently with the data. It's a way around it. This is achievable today, but I'm optimistic that better solutions, more akin to what something like Power BI has put in place, are right down the road. But it can be done now.
So to kind of add that just a little bit, Steve, with the studio, one of the things we've been playing with internally is instead of sharing, as an MSP, we have all of our clients, we have data in there from various systems that have, like our portals have multiple client stuff in there. So if we go to search for something like a contract for you, we don't want it to pull in from other clients or data from them or the password policy or all that stuff. So we're using the studio, and right now it's only internally as team. So we have set up where it's tech ops and customer satisfaction or client experience and sale, whatever. We have set up now to where if I want to pull the password policy, it pulls from my portal. It doesn't cross contaminate the Melissa's folder, cancer, things like that. Eventually, when it grows up a little bit, then maybe we'll be able to go to have more client stuff in there. Pull password policy that I can use for our data home. And it's going to pull samples from others, but without the details of the proprietary data, the confidential data, all that stuff. It's just basic password stuff.
Fundamental question, I think, Shane, you touched on it, Ron, I touched on it too. Is there, does the level of subscription impact the controls that you could put on any individual account?
Business. Business premium, and was it E3 as well, or just
E3, E5.
E3, E5s, and business premium. So if you don't have that now, if you're with us, your CSA will be in touch. If you're not with us, you need business premium or E3, or E5. Those are the minimums.
And just to add to it, if you're currently in the situation where you have a business standard or a business basic and you've bolted on the applications, by the time you add the Azure P2 license or an E5 security license to your subscription, you're going to be paying more than you would be paying with the bundle already. So the three things that you want to consider when you take a look at that is, in terms of the licensing, business premium is positioned today to add as much value as possible, especially in the security section of it, including device policy management, including application management, cloud app security, user identity management, and so on. You add all of that into it, you pay your, I don't know what it is in the America, $26 or whatever it turns out to be. Canadian, it's always worse. It's whatever the day exchange rate is, which is terrible. What a way to work. When you consider that though, and you take a look across the board of what your licensing is, have Ron and the team or whoever you work with give you the breakdown of what what you get best in class for your business within that space. Typically 9.5 out of 10 times it'll be your business premium will be the best savings, especially business premium will be your best savings. And the idea here with Microsoft is to make that SKU, the hero SKU across the small business space. They're continually updating what's available in that SKU without changing the price. So just recently, they added 11 new security protocols into Business Premium that govern things around HIPAA, medical compliance, and personal identifiable information, your PII. So they just added from the enterprise SKU into your B SKU. So it's a really good place to be. Just make sure anything you do, however flavor version you do it, make sure that you add in those security protocols that are available via either Business Premium or adding in the requisite licensing. But from a cost perspective for your company, Business Premium will be the sweet spot.
A follow-up question. So from a best practice standpoint, has AI or any other influences on technology changed the level of best practices?
Has AI changed?
Well, relative to access and new
It's
functionality that's.
honestly, I think it's shed different light on it. 10 years ago, like Dustin said, AI has been around for 20 some odd years. It was totally different back in the day. 10 years ago, it was totally different. 5 years ago, it was different. ChatGPT,
Yesterday. Yeah.
Yesterday was pretty.
ChatGPT came out, what, a year and a half ago or something like that? And I think a slide we saw recently was that in 3 months, it took them 3 months to go to 100 million users or something like that. Yeah, that was like mind blowing.
So to add flavor to that, it took 18 and a half years for cell phones to get to the same usage level as ChatGPT did in 3 months.
So
Just so you know.
It's the proverbial shiny object thing. So with that is like, well, when it came out, it's like, and actually I won't say I made enemies internally with our internal folks, but I made some enemies with them because I pushed back hard physically because you guys were coming at me, it's like, we want this, or clients want this. I'm like, no, crossword, hard no. Here's why. And it was not a good sell because it was a battle. But once they got it, they understood why. And majority of them are here, so hopefully get more insight into that. We've had to work through those bugs. Those bugs being the security bugs. Once we got through all those, we're ready. Yeah, we went through thorough testing. We worked with Sherweb to make sure we have our stuff in place. We did our own readiness assessment. Make sure we're ready before we can go to the CSAs and push out to the clients. Okay, we're ready. Here's what we do. Have the people in your IT that we support and they were coming, it's like, we want this. Do we know what it is? When it's Copilot, it's AI, it's a new thing. It's like, I want this. You gotta pay $360 upfront. That's love. Thank you, Microsoft. We love you for that. So you do that and you don't use it. So you just waste $360 because now it's not really ready yet. So just a few more months, they'll ready this test or ready this assessment and it'll be stuff.
But these readiness sets are a point in time, right? With things changing so quickly, how can you maybe leverage automation to make sure you maintain that security as things change continually?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, man.
Yeah, instead of how automated if it drops before 85, shut it all down.
A lot, the general Copilot that we showed off in office at the beginning, like I said, I don't think it's ready necessarily yet for you guys to start ingesting. I showed what it can do, and I think it's the most expensive, least useful option on the table, right? But Power Automate, what I showed in Power BI, those security controls are ready, and those systems are ready, and you can really start leveraging some amazing applications for AI for your organization now at a much cheaper price tag with the security that you're looking for, because those tools already had a robust infrastructure, right? And I think those are more ready for prime time. That's why I gave that example of reading emails, responding back, but we're seeing a lot of uses for that. Not necessarily revolution, but taking things that people were doing as manual tasks and freeing them up from that so that they can be effective in what they should be doing.
But you're still securing things as they stand now. As
Well,
things
so-
change.
Yeah.
Things might fall out of compliance.
It not might, it will 100%. So my stance on the opposite end to Dustin on this one is when you think about it, let's just take AI entirely out of the picture today, right now, take it out of the picture. Do you have your current security structure at your organization today in a place that if it were audited, you'd sleep well at night? Right? The answer is no. You put AI in front of it. AI is not the bad guy. AI is just giving everybody an easier way to poke holes in your current security framework. So if you just take AI out of your brain for a second and consider that what you're not doing today is what you should be doing anyway. Okay? AI is just forcing people who are interested in using it to take back another look at what they're doing today so that they can plug those holes. And to Ron's point, when he turned it on internally with a user that had zero access, supposedly zero access, it was able to retrieve all the information anyway, which highlighted to Ron and his team that what they were doing today wasn't working. So the next part of that is when you think about your secure score or your identity score, stuff's gonna fall out the back of the pipe as new stuff comes in the front. And you're gonna have to consistently review that month to month, week to week, month to month to make sure that your security posture stays up, because the $18 billion cyber hacking job that is today, people trying to get into your environment, steal your data and use it to do whatever, they're not sleeping. They're not sitting around going, well, we've created this one, we're gonna sit on it for 6 years and see how. No, the next day they're using the AI to better attack you.
Well, that was my question though. How can you better leverage these tools and the automation that you guys do
There's no automation.
to monitor?
Yeah.
When things change.
So monitoring, yes, absolutely. You can use to Dustin's point with Power BI, Power Flow. I loved his automation around to get people to do their timesheet, right? Annoy the hell out of them with text messages. That's an automation that you can put in place today when your score falls below X amount, or have a device compliance in play that stops people from going out of the security spread. So as an example, if you put a device compliance in place and you say every 6 months, a new operating system is updated, the old operating system that was on the bottom falls off. If someone becomes out of compliance, they can't work, so they get locked out. They have to go update their machine. So all of you serial, don't reboot, ignore the update people are gonna be out of it. And that's what you can do, Matt, to help with it. But you can then get even more crazy with the orchestration, right? And every time something blips, have a notification sent saying there's a new update or there's a 0 day, have something scrubbing to provide you updates so that you can then get ahead with it, because those things will happen every day. But from an automation prime time, again, you can do anything you want in the enterprise space based on what you can afford to do there. Down here in our SMB space, we got to get something that's more pre-canned. But yeah, I mean, you could basically do anything you want from a monitoring perspective.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've been playing with over the last few months is that using what's already in Microsoft and the tenant is like the reporting when the secure score changes at all, whether it goes up a decimal point or a full point, I get alerted. The global admins in our company get alerted. We get alerted what changed. And Jermaine made this change. If it's one that hurts our score or whatever, why? It might be legit, it might not be.
Yeah.
If it does not, that lowers it. If we remove geo-filtering because Dustin's going to be a candidate because of Jermaine, it lowers our score, and we get alerted to that. Why? Oh, he's going, okay, it's legit. So the secure score is not the save all for, being ready. It's just the baseline that's saying you're secure enough. If you do 3 dozen things in the secure score, you can have a score of 8. But you do one, it drops you down 30 points. It's things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with this secure score, like takeaways for the group, what are some of the most common areas that are?
That's a good question too.
Low hanging fruit.
Yeah, all the low hanging fruit ones. So MFA, external tagging, DMARC, DKIM, geo-filtering. So like if you travel out of the country or out of state, you really want to do that. If you cross, if some of y'all go back towards Virginia, if you cross into Virginia, you can't go to certain websites. You go to Maryland, you go to all these websites, and same thing with countries. So the filtering, allowing external rules being created is a big one, which we see a lot on our side is hacking happens or compromise happens and a rule is created, preventing those rules from being created. Now that comes with the downside is users might be impacted because they can't create rules without spending a particular for us to do or something like that. So really all the The basic ones around just general security posture, just basic security.
Yeah.
More that go very in depth, but they are user impact.
One thing to note too, I know that we've talked about, like, if you don't use Microsoft Defender, for example, you have a different EDR or antivirus that can.
Yeah, so,
Or
well, but secure score gets a little kind of tricky is that if you use a lot of third parties, Microsoft Secure Score is designed for Microsoft, it's right there in the word, right? Or the name. So we use primarily SentinelOne as our EDR. So if we use SentinelOne and we go in there and say, do you use an EDR? We say, yes, third party. SentinelOne, cool. You get a fraction of the points. You don't get all those points. If you understand you have to use Defender and it validates you use Defender, you get all those points. So SentinelOne, Defender, they're the same. So, but it depends on how you do those. So again, that's where you look at those points and everything. Says, okay, those 3 points that I lost, but I have SentinelOne completeness in place, or spam filtering. I don't use the embedded spam filtering. I use a third party. You don't get all the points. There's just the flaw that it has in secure score.
Yeah, going back to third parties and the example about time cards, to take the cross, because the Copilot cross to third parties, we're using ADP, for example, for time cards. Would we able to put something in and say, check for that?
Power BI connects to the most things on earth. So it has something in it called Power Query, and it is able to connect to pretty much anything. Another DP Solutions client who I won't name, we hooked it up to IBM System 75. IBM System 75 was discontinued in 1983. Discontinued in 1983. Like big tape drives and things like that. We all high-fived over that one. It's connected to Power BI. So ADP all day. That's everybody.
And like donor box, anything for like the way we get donations, anything.
Oh, yeah, anything that has an API. API is the way computer programs talk to each other, right? Or Excel spreadsheets or databases that are on-prem that you may have that are like in your environment or hosted somewhere. Anything, that's what it's for. It's to connect. And the purpose is, when I showed that demo for the National Aquarium, that was 4 different systems, right? They have a donation system. They have a donor management system. They have an event management system. We connected all those systems together. And we said, hey, that field, that's an ID field that connects things behind the scenes. Don't show that on the screen. That field's money. Show that field a lot. You know what I mean? We taught it what fields to show and what not to, what lingo they use. So yes, you're expected to bring in multiple systems, teach it how all those systems and terminology interacts, and then it becomes magical after a couple go around, not at first. Yeah. Yes.
Apologies if this was covered while I stepped out of the room briefly. You guys mentioned the different licensing that needs to be prepared for use of Copilot and things of that nature. Does that change for nonprofit and educational clients, or is that the same guidelines and standards?
I'd argue that as a nonprofit or anything dealing in those realms, you need to elevate above that as well. Right, you've got donor funding coming in from whatever organizations you're working with, government as well. You've got lots of registration information, lots of personal identifiable information. Your security posture should be your priority in terms of what you do right now anyway. And it means you should be in that scope for licensing. As high as you can get with the best cost return in your environment is what you should be doing.
Sam, that kind of is the proverbial you always pay for.
Yeah.
So the nonprofits, it's great because it costs zero to barely anything, but they strip out certain features. That's normal. That's normal nonprofits. You strip out certain features on there. So then you get into like a nonprofit school, for example, if you guys have anything that deals with HIPAA or CUI or any of that stuff, if you get a government, whatever, I don't know how that happens. If you happen to get that, well, your nonprofit's not gonna work. You're gonna have to go to that. So it's just, okay.
Well, always feel free to ask for more money because they're putting the compliance on you, right?
While Copilot and these AIs don't have a discount yet, because they're losing money on them. These are impossibly expensive to run, just so you all know. A query in one of these tools that you do in like ChatGPT costs between 1 and 3 cents every single time you run. That's how taxing it is to run. And in fact, when people ask me the limitations for these tools, I have to talk about lots of data is a problem. I showed an example of summarizing one person, not summarizing everybody in an aggregate situation, right? Because that's still something that's a limitation. But while the pricing for the AI piece isn't, there's a lot of good pricing in Microsoft land for nonprofits to replace things that people have. People will often come to me and say, what's the difference between this, Razor's Edge and Blackbaud and this? And I say, well, one costs 40 times the price of the other. Like Microsoft gives pennies on the dollar discounts for a lot of their tools. And I see nonprofits buying industry-specific tools that have to charge full price for because that's their only customers. And a lot of times we'll bring them over to what are considered more generic tools, Dynamics and Power Apps, Power BI, and it ends up being a lot cheaper for them. So while the AI piece is that, the rest of the ecosystem around it absolutely is, and it's good to look at those, revisit those. If you're on industry-specific tools, you can always revisit with us, what would this look like if this was built specific to us in Microsoft land? A lot of times in a 3-year TCO, we eat Imus's lunch and Blackbaud's lunch and things like that. So the Microsoft ecosystem has a good answer for nonprofits across the board.
So let me jump in with a question that was sent in earlier that we really haven't covered much is what are the legal risks of using AI, copyright, harassment, ethics, and also you may want to tie in on that employee usage policy. Any tips or tricks on what should be in that?
I'll start with that. If we have kids in high school, middle school, and like stuff, computers, so run the school. Professor gives an assignment or whatever, pretty much guaranteed. That's my personal guarantee is that half of those get some form of AI. They write their essays or whatever. Personally, ethical wise, it's wrong. Is it legally wrong? It's plagiarism. It might be plagiarism. So again, and I'm not going to go down that path.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
It gets into that side, and I'm just speaking from a support security side. That's why I want them to finish the rest of it. But it gets into that side a little bit. Is it ethical? Is we can't tell Dawn what's ethical and unethical with what she does on a daily basis. We just say what's legal, or if it's HIPAA compliant, or if it's CMMC compliant or discompliant, you can say if it's compliant or not. But from our perspective, we can't really say yay or nay. We can just push in that direction.
You two better cheer after I'm done talking.
UNBC here.
Yeah. Last week I was interviewed by Fox 45 about this topic. And what I said was, is it unethical to use a calculator in math class? Right? They were not allowed in math. Used to be, right? When calculators were first invented, if you brought them to math class, you were a cheater, you were a liar, you were wrong. Now my daughter, if she forgets her calculator, she can't go to math class. This is the English equivalent of a calculator. Let us be clear, okay? And while we have issues with it today, this will be hilarious 15 years, one generation removed, okay? And that's how I feel about it.
I'm gonna pile on with Dustin here. If I went to a library, which I did 25 years ago. Good, that's it. I agree.
So Justin, let me follow up on that, because you and I had a conversation about a student that was expelled.
Yeah, so a student in the area, this is why the news reached out to us, was accused of cheating on a paper using AI, and they ran it through GPT-0, which is an AI detection tool. And it said that it thought she had cheated, and so they gave her suspension. So that's the 10th grader. This is going to show up on her college applications, right? I ran another thing that I knew was written by humans through GPT-0. It said with 98% certainty, it was written by AI. It was the US Constitution.
All right, so let's add some context to all of this, because it's very important, very important. If I went and I read a book and I wrote my paper about the book, and I took excerpts out of the book and put it into my paper, and my professor knew the book very well, and they're like, oh, you took this whole section out of the book. How is that any different than today, where our awesome students and everybody studying has an opportunity to write something that then now spans across the framework of all of the information available on that topic? Now, I think the discussion that should be happening here is when we think about how we ask our young people or ourselves to put information out to public, when you take ownership for it, is you have to be in a place to take ownership or cite where you're getting your information from, okay? And the idea here is it's not about it being unethical. Go right ahead and use as much content as you can, but be aware as an individual student or contributor that once you're done and you walk out that door and you graduate, somebody somewhere is going to ask you to talk about the thing that you wrote about. And when you can't do it, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose all the other things. I think it takes more sense, or makes more sense from my perspective, to educate people on the downside of plagiarism, the downside of using something that you don't even proofread and I'm putting it out into the public. This isn't is it unethical to use all the data that's been accumulated by humans for the last 1.5, how many ever thousands of decades of years, whatever you want to count it. It's how do I present that forward for my best benefit later on? Because I used to be a biologist. I wrote the first paper in English studying a special monkey in the middle of Peruvian jungle where the people only spoke Spanish and Quechua. And I wrote the first English paper. You know how I read the other papers that were written in Spanish? I used Google Translate. If I didn't have 5 years to go learn how to speak Spanish to come back to read the paper, right? Now, if you think about that, is that unethical? Did I cheat by translating a paper into English so that I could understand it to write an English version of my own paper? No. So when you think about how we're going to do this, the situation should be, let's open our minds a little bit here. Our framework is different. When calculators were invented, the math that people were doing at the time, if you're like me and you did a little bit of integration and you did mechanical mathematics and you did physics, nobody has the time to go permutate Schrodinger's equation. You want Schrodinger's equation to go straight into your baseline that you're starting with to go up. You don't want to start here and come back up to here with the derivative and then go do the rest of the work. You got to start here because you already know how the derivative works and you can punch it into the calculator and the calculator will give you what you need to start to go up. Otherwise, we won't have progress.
And to be clear, in schools, how did we solve this in math? We no longer ask just for the answer. Show your work. We say, show your work, right? And so what's the equivalent of that in English? We already have the tool, right? We all know that in the G Suite and in Microsoft, you can co-author a document, right? And so what we've suggested is have an AI proctor basically watching somebody write the document, right? How many times do they hit backspace? How many times do they, obviously when GPT runs it, just boom, writes the whole thing. Let's make sure that the person is actually writing in that way. Yeah.
So say hypothetically, student writes a paper and then has an issue with the document, the docx file, and has to fix that electronic document. So what do? They open the document, they copy and paste into a new document. All of the metadata behind how many times they backspaced, how many times, how long it took them to write the paper, that's gone. In that new document, that's gone.
Technically, I would say that we have version control in all of the Office suites. They can revert back a version and we could tell the system to do that. But these little intricacies are things that we have to work out together. Like when calculators first came out, we had to figure out, do we just not allow them or do we figure out a way to work with them? And we eventually figured out a way to work with them, right? And I think this is going to be a similar situation. And I think that same show your work model, right, is the answer. It is unethical to say that you wrote a paper, to your point, and have a machine write it. I agree. But the answer isn't to ban it from the classroom. It's to figure out how to make it a calculator, right? Yeah.
And also maybe how do you use the time you save productively? Because that was you save that watch. If you do something else that now you can elevate and move to the next step.
Right. I totally agree with that sentiment. And that's the sentiment we give to a lot of folks. A lot of our work in Incite Automation, I'll never forget this one account. There was a woman at a factory that processes poultry, okay, in the area. And her job was to update their ERP system, their main computer system, with the pricing of the week. You know, thigh left 4 ounces, $1.47 per pound. Like, and she would go through for 30 hours a week, this booklet about this thick, to type all that, retype it weekly into that system. And I said, it was that even why I was there. We weren't even there for that, you know, marketing system for them. And I said, oh, they have an API. And they were like, yeah, I'm like, you don't have to type all this. I could just hook up with Power BI, the Power App, automate to this API, and we could just hit your system that way. I could build this in like 3 hours. And we did. She was shaking. She said, I've been entering this data for 25 years. You know, what do I do now? And I said, something more important, something better, right? Whenever we remove a job, hierarchy of needs, there's a better job waiting for us to do, and that we should be focused on instead. We don't know anybody that sets bowling pins at bowling alleys. Nobody, we don't need
Not
that.
anymore.
We're not anymore. That's not a job. We have more jobs to do.
Basically, the entry point that becomes high. Junior
Yes.
developers may not be a thing because AI can pay all junior stuff. So you might, the entry point to being a developer is gonna be a little bit higher.
Way higher. Your base point, getting in there will be way higher. You'll start from constructed backend, right? You're gonna start from a constructed backend. It's great.
That's where students need to know how to use AI to get there so that they're using their human capital to do what AI can do, what they can do, and that's where it comes into like, what is my value with AI? How do I use AI productively to get to that higher level and plug in at that higher level?
Selfishly, to your point, because I looked at where you are, right? The one thing that hasn't changed is the ability to listen to people and take what they need and translate that into a data model, right? Good relational database is a hard thing to find, and schools will continue to need to teach that. We watch very carefully, can this AI take what I'm saying and build a data model? It cannot. We try and we're like, do we need all these employees still? The answer is yes. That's the thing that is the hardest for us to find as we're hiring for software developers. It's people that can take words that are being said, because developers are not always the best at listening comprehension, just to warn you in case of point. And then having a good understanding of object orientation and taking that and translating it. That hasn't changed. And I've always argued that that's the basis of computer science. And that's like.
I'm gonna keep pummeling you with information similar to this is when you think about to Dustin's point, when you think about the baseline and how you require a person to do it, the other part of it is prompt generation. We may not be able to have our data models today be made by the AI in a way that's useful to humans, because the human's communicating with the computer in your natural language, and the computer doesn't understand everything in your natural language yet. So when you prompt generate today, it's gonna be way different 3 years from now of how we're gonna be able to prompt generate then and be able to draw those inferences from the machine, right? Because when you tried Google, the first time it came out, you had to put brackets, you had to put dashes, commas, periods all over the place. Now, you can type whatever you want in Google and it'll come out, regardless of what your frame of reference is conversational wise, it'll come out with the stuff you're looking for, because Google has migrated and generated itself to a place where you don't need to put the commas or the queries or any of that into the search bar to get what you want. And that's what's going to happen over time as well, being able to translate all that. I mean, I don't even think our developers like having conversations with people. Right? Yeah. And if they're doing that hard, they're developing. But at the end of the day, when you think about it, if you can translate your request to that developer, you need an intermediary today. Later on, you'll be able to translate that. And if you can't talk to the developer, you can't talk to the AI, because the AI is even worse.
The speed at which these tools are getting good at really understanding this is amazing. When ChatGPT, the first week it came out, I asked it, because I really wanted to put it through its paces. I asked it, well, Steve has an 8-gallon bucket and Bob has a 4-gallon bucket, and they give me both of their buckets. How many buckets do I have? And it said 12.
Well,
Right? So I thought it would. And today I can't pull it that
no,
way.
no.
And now if you guys Google after this, GPT 4.0, the letter O, oh, terrifying how good it is to talk. The inflection, it has a voice now. The inflection of it is amazing. The easy of it. Sorry. John,
I had a question.
So going back to the conversation surrounding plagiarism, right? I hear a lot of talk about that students need to be taught how to do this, right? And my question is for both teaching. What does it look like to for the instructors who provide that training to provide the training?
we're all figuring that out, right?
That's a
Because
really
that's a
great
big-
question.
That's a big
So,
issue, right?
well-
I love the idea of like being taught.
You need to buy in from the teachers and the administrators, like when, Eureka Math came out, if the teacher didn't really believe in Eureka Math, the way she teaches math is gonna be different. Yeah, this should be, but I'm gonna have teachers, so if you haven't bought into how this mentality of we gotta work with it, then you can't get the students in, right? You gotta
That's
get.
not answering my question. I'm asking, I'm
So-
wondering who's providing.
So here's what I will say, two things to that one, Don. That's a brilliant question, because if everybody's learning about AI, who's gonna talk to people about AI? Well, these guys that walk around doing it. So when we think about, you run a school, you've got all of this information there already, you've got this whole brain trust within your organization, within the school. The school that develops the first program to train their teachers on how to deliver the ethics of utilization of AI, that school or that group or those people are gonna be up here, right? So my answer to your question is, somebody out there who does this for a living every day needs to go and say, hey, I'm now gonna stop entering the price list into this manually every day, automate that, and I'm gonna go figure out how to do this up here. Because now, you know what you're gonna turn yourself into? The expert on how to, and you're gonna be the first education system in the system doing it. So the answer is we gotta go use our brains, be creative and figure out how to do that while the AI does the rote tasks today. And that's really where you're gonna land. And whoever gets there first, those are the people that are gonna be the experts. And you're then gonna elevate yourself even further because people are gonna come to you and ask for your training material. And then you're gonna refine it even further so they'll never catch up to you. And then you're gonna be the expert in the space. And that's how the human race and all values of commerce work. The guy that came up with fire ain't famous. It's the people that came up with fireworks that are famous. Why? Because they took fire, they took physical gunpowder, they figure out how to pack it and shoot it. And then everybody went, wow. You know how many people had to go behind that, right? But the guy that came up with the fireworks, he took all of that knowledge accumulated, created something new, and now he's the Amazo, right? And that's probably gonna be you, Don, but you know, let me know.
We have time for like one more question.
Ed's keeping us on track here.
I'm trying, but before we do that, I wanted to remind you that we're giving away a Roomba and you can see the information for the. So you may want to just take out your phone.
And it's on the key cards at the back too, yeah?
We're gonna do the drawing on Wednesday, so you can do it today or I'll email the link.
Oh,
So I just wanted to give more time for questions, so I think if we want to.
AI found it too, look.
Yeah.
Heard you.
So backing up a little bit to readiness. If we're here today, this is very exciting, right? So we want to try it, right? We're a Microsoft shop, so we got a lot of cool stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, if you were gonna try some things so that you can kind of tell the rest of you folks, well, here's some of the things to be done for us. How do you prepare for that? Or are you prepared? Or if you're comfortable with your own security, are you prepared?
I look at it as if you're prepared, if you're comfortable with your own security, you're not comfortable, first of all. And
Thank you.
I think that it's being in charge of our security. I'm never comfortable with our security. It changes. I have global admins, I have other admins that do stuff I don't know about. This was added, license, all that stuff comes into play. So I'm never comfortable,
Right.
but I also don't lose sleep over it. So I know I'm at a acceptable level of comfort. Call it that.
Flip
As far as,
the switch.
what's that?
Flip the switch. It's what's your tolerable risk level,
Yeah, okay.
right? Forget about not forget about, it is with what Ron said, and how comfortable are you that when you put it in place and somebody sees something that they shouldn't see, how comfortable are you gonna be with that? But at the end of the day, you need to do an audit, regardless of what you decide. Go prove to yourself that you need to do that you're good to go. Do an audit.
So
Absolutely.
Joe, as far as like rolling it out internally, like how we did it ourselves, and this is what we did at DP Solutions, is that we have 2 licenses, myself and Ken. We're the only ones that have licenses right now.
Okay.
Excuse me, is we have access, or I have access to pretty much everything. Ken has a little bit less access. We started playing with it. What can we do? Because we already have access to everything. I'm not gonna give it to Sam, who doesn't have as much access to play with it, because he might see something I don't want him to see.
Right.
And just in case I don't have the controls in place. That's where we came up with that dummy account. We tested all that stuff and we closed all those loopholes. So now I'm very comfortable with how we can roll it out internally. Individually, that's something that we would have to work with, or you internally, you would work with your own tenant. Right at your comfort level, test it. I'm all for creating a dummy account as well.
Yeah.
Test that. And then when you have that comfort level, then start pushing out to people that need it.
Right. If I were you though, Joe, if I were you, I would take all the stuff that Ron already did and just have him come do. Just have him come do it, because he's already learned all the things.
That's
So like, now your base level shouldn't be where Ron started. It should be like, hey, where's Ron today?
Well,
Hey,
that's
can you guys come in and do it?
We've been working on our internal readiness. This is kind of the other day I rolled my eyes at Jermaine and James. Is we were working for a good 2 months on our internal readiness. We searched Google and found all kinds of different options and what do we need to do to be Copilot ready? Everything was there and it was nice, pretty charts. We came up with something. I looked at the one that Jermaine gave the other day and it was like twice as long. But all that extra stuff that was on there was like an addition to something we already did.
Yeah.
And we did it. It's just, we didn't count it as that. So
Yeah.
the readiness, spreadsheet we got is the one that we're building our templates off of now.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's collaborative, right? At the end of the day, if you don't collaborate on doing it, we're not don't go do the things that everybody else has already done, right? I mean, everybody here, whoever's got a support ticket, every time it gets elevated, you don't want that elevated support engineer to go back and do everything that the previous engineers did.
Yeah.
You're building that on that foundation. So yeah, I mean, talk to everybody in the group, have Ron and company and Dustin, figure out how to get all your stuff into the BI securely. Just have other people do it who have already done it so that you now get to address all the fruits of their labor and race ahead.
So, thanks everybody for coming. This conversation has been awesome, and I would echo that. I would encourage people to connect with one another. Anyway, thanks for coming, and we're here till 10:30. So mix and mingle.
Awesome. Thank you.